what are your expectations for Robert Saleh this year? Obviously, heavily dependent on free agency and the draft. We don't know what his personnel is going to be, but in terms of like impact schematically and maybe emotionally on the team, what do you expect from Saleh?
Well, one of the things that's been an issue, not talked about a lot throughout the 49ers coverage, honestly, is it probably could be talked about more, is how the players on this team, the Fred Warners, the Nick Bosas, how they kind of decide the coaching and like, do we like this coach? Are we bought in? Like Steve Wilkes had problems getting the Niners defense to accept him. They weren't big fans of him. They were fans of Nick Sorensen, but Sorensen wasn't the guy to pull the trigger on the play calling. So now you get Robert Saleh.
They were fans of Nick Sorensen until they threw him under the bus. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So now you get Robert Saleh, who is one, a capable and a good defensive coordinator, but also will have the team behind him. Like
he like drafted these players. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah,
he's got that going from him. And then he has that emotional lift that Nick Sorensen didn't have, that Steve Wilkes didn't have, that they haven't had since DeMeco Ryans. So I think all of those things are great. I expect the 49ers to be a much better defense. How good will be determined on how they do this offseason acquiring defensive players.
Yeah, we heard the report from Tony Pauline, who says he's talking to Niners assistant coaches at the East-West Shrine game, who are sort of dropping hints about how the defense is going to change. He said that they want to make it faster and more exotic. I think every team wants to be faster and more exotic on defense, but it does kind of highlight the fact that the Niners have become pretty slow on defense, particularly at safety. I love Talanoa Hufanga. He runs a 4.65, and he ran that before he tore his ACL. I don't love Jair Brown. He runs a 4.65 too. And then you got Malik Mustafa, who looks like a nice, good player who runs a 4.55. When Saleh was here, he had freaking Jimmy Ward, who ran a 4.47 and played cornerback in the NFL, was a first-round pick, was a premium athlete. I just don't have any players like that anymore. So I would imagine, I don't know how easy it is to get the next Jimmy Ward again. He was a first-round pick, and the Niners aren't drafting a DB in round one. Maybe they will. They could go sign Javon Holland. That would be expensive, though.
It'd be a good one. I the league is trying to kind of transition like, hey, let's make these safeties linebackers. Well, what the 49ers kind of need to do this offseason is make a corner a safety.
Yeah, a guy that can play the middle of the field, but also like cover a tight end man-to-man. Because you don't trust Jair Brown to do that.
Mustafa's small. I think that's going to be big. I mean, that's the thing is Huff and Mustafa are very similar in some ways. And so you really don't need two. It's kind of repetitive. And
you don't want Huff in man coverage. You want him in zone coverage because he's great instinctually. But in man, he's got athletic limitations.
And the 49ers have always, they never had just like a true free safety, really. They just have two guys.
Since Ward left.
Since Ward left. So maybe they're going to get back to that. That would be a huge thing. But really, I think the defensive tackles is the key more than anything. More like they can run it back with Huff and survive if they got to stop the run, man. If you can't stop the run, what do you do? You're nothing.
But this is what's so concerning to me is since everyone says like Kyle Shanahan, built this on his own mostly, but he also inherited 2 first-round pick defensive tackles. And Buckner and Armstead. Now they're both gone. And since Kyle and John have been here, who's the best D tackle they've acquired? I mean, they drafted Kinlaw. They drafted Thomas. They signed Hargrave. They signed Malik. They traded for Malik Collins. I mean, it's not exactly a position that they've done well with. And now they have to knock this out of the freaking park.
Yeah, man. They need, honestly, my opinion, they need to go get DJ Jones and draft a defensive tackle in the first 2 rounds. I feel like that's the way they need to approach this. I think DJ Jones is without doubt top 2 or 3 statistically at stopping the run. He still last year he was top 2 or 3 stopping the run. So that's a no-brainer guy that you've had in the building. Bring him back, sign him. That takes care of one of these positions. You still have all these other guys that you were starting this past season. There will be depth now. And then you go out and draft the defensive tackle. If you can sign DJ Jones and nail the defensive tackle in the draft, and then you have Collins and these guys as backups, as rotational pieces, I think you're in a good spot.
DJ Jones is solid, but what you really want is what you had in Buckner and Armstead, which is a first-round talent, someone who can stop the run and push the pocket. And
Mm.
that's what Jalen Carter is doing, and that's what Armstead and Buckner were doing in their prime. And, I mean, that's what the Niners have to draft in this. They have to find that guy in this draft. And so far, they have never found that guy, Kyle
Yeah.
and John. They've tried.
Right.
They thought Kinlaw would be that guy. They thought Solomon Thomas would be that guy. They have never found that guy. So this is the time. This is it.
Yeah.
Got to get it right. If it's Walter
Agreed, man.
Nolan, whoever it is, you got to get it right.
That's the key to me in this draft. That was the key to me last year. I mean, defensive tackle and O-line were my number 1 and 2 priorities. Last draft, they didn't even approach it. Didn't draft any defensive tackle. They got Evan Anderson as undrafted free agent. He seems okay, but he's not that dude. DJ Jones statistically is a top 3 run stuffer in the NFL, and he's a free agent. The 49ers need to get him, in my opinion, and they need to find a guy in the draft.
I'm glad you brought up Evan Anderson, though. I like him.
I do too.
Of all the Niners, the defensive tackles the Niners have brought in under Kyle and John, he might be one who has some actual potential to be more than just like a 2-down. Like, he looked like he could push the pocket a little bit. I'm interested in him. I don't know if he can play more than 15, 20 snaps in a game right now. He needs to get an NFL body, but that's an actual prospect they got to develop.
And I'll be real, man. Like, unfortunately, Clea Davis kind of had the Javon Kinlaw career where he's always injured.
He looked good in preseason, though.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if he can be healthy, he looks actually intriguing. Also, to be real, if he's your backup defensive tackle, Evan Anderson and Clea Davis, if those two are your backup defensive tackles and they stay healthy, that's encouraging.
Yeah. And again, with Evan Anderson, I wouldn't write him off as being like your starting defensive tackle one day. He looked intriguing, but he also needs to keep improving. He's not there yet. But Salah, he's got his work cut out for him, man. I mean, a lot of it's going to be, I would imagine he's going to have a big say on personnel this offseason because Adam Peters is gone and they don't have a true assistant GM or GM type who's going to have a big say. It's going to be John being like, hey, Kyle, what do you want to do? And Kyle's going to be like, if it's defense, hey, Robert, what do you want to do? And he's done a great job with linebackers in the past. I think he has a great feel for DBs. They got to get the D-line right, man.
I think Robert Saleh came into this interview like, I could be a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle was like, well, we're going to make you the highest paid head defensive coordinator in the NFL. And he was probably like, great. I need to be in charge of my coaching staff. And I want say on the draft. I feel like he's involved in all of that.
I would imagine too, because like the way I look at it is I bet Adam Peters had a big say in picks when he was here. But even then, on offensive players in the first, I want to say 4 rounds, skill players, those are Kyle picks. I would imagine. Final say, his decision. And now I think probably same thing. First 3 rounds, 4 rounds, defensive players, probably Salah gets final say. And that's probably a good thing because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. They did a pretty good job last year drafting.
Let John Lynch draft the DBs and safeties. Let Robert Saleh draft your linebackers and D linemen. Find somebody from the outside organization to draft quarterbacks, and let Kyle draft his weapons. I think that's not running backs though, just receivers.
I mean, and that linebacker, that weak side linebacker spot to me is so critical because when Greenlaw was at his best, Niners are an elite defense. But if you bet on Greenlaw and he gets hurt again, you're fucked. Pardon my French. I know I've cursed a lot today. I'm sorry. You're screwed. You're in a worse position than last year. And if you let him go and he balls out and you sign some stiff, you're screwed. So I don't think anyone knows what the right thing to do is there, but it's a big variance of outcomes.
If since 2009, 10, the 49ers linebacker position was not something I was ever concerned about. It wasn't. They always nailed it. Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis, they had Aziz, they got Fred Warner, they have Greenlaw. Then they go with Devondre Campbell. Like that was the worst. That's the worst they've done at linebacker since like 2009.
And to me, like that was very much. I blame Kyle for that one. They needed a freaking linebacker. Adam Peters was gone, and John's like, anyone has any suggestions? And Kyle's like, well, I I was in Atlanta with Campbell. He was fined 5, 7, 8 years ago. What other connection did they have to him? But what's nice about, I think one of the best things about bringing Salah back, he's a former linebacker coach. That's his specialty. Like Kyle with wide receivers, he drafted Warner. He saw the vision for Fred Warner. He drafted him in round 3. That dude was like a nickel outside linebacker at BYU. No one really thought he was going to be special in the NFL. They thought he was kind of soft, and now Salah had the vision and turned him into the best linebacker in football. He also drafted Greenlaw, so they need to replenish that position. They got Salah back. Now, he did draft Reuben Foster, but so did I don't know who's responsible for that. I trust Salah with linebackers.
And I'm curious to see what he can do with D Winters, because I like D Winters. He gets banged up quite a bit, but from what I've seen from D Winters, I love his speed. I'm hopefully
Robert like D Winters.
You want to like D Winters? Yeah.
I want to like D Winters. Like I want to feel the way about Winters that I feel about Mustafa, but I don't, because I feel like with Mustafa he flies around. He's generally in the right places. With Winters, it's like you fly around, but I feel like you make a lot of mistakes, and you're part of the problem with the run defense.
I think with Winters,
you haven't got that much playing time.
I think with Winters, he's over pursuing, and I want to see what Robert Saleh can do with Winters, because I like his talent.
Yes, I like his talent too. He was a 6th round pick. He's fast. He's improved, and I wouldn't give up on him. I would also like to see the Niners draft a linebacker a little higher, like make it more serious investment in that position. It's so critical. Like once upon a time, you took Reuben Foster in round 1 because it was so important, and it is that important. We've seen what a violent, fast, tone-setting weak side linebacker does for this particular team, because Fred Warner's great, but he's not really any of those things.
And that's the thing.
So I don't know who that player is, but if they could get that guy in round 2, round 3, get him.
And I think that's what they need to do with Greenlaw. As much as I love Greenlaw, I'm just too concerned about his injury. I mean, when he's healthy, he's phenomenal, and I could regret saying this. He could come back and be perfectly healthy and ball out on another team, and it wouldn't surprise me. But it's just with the way this team is structured and their salary cap and everything. Even though they have a ton of salary cap, I'm just projecting down the line. With Brock Purdy, I'm a little concerned about signing Greenlaw, even though he's phenomenal when he's healthy.
I mean, like, he's a tough one, because when he came back and played against the Rams in the first half, he looked like the Greenlaw of old, and he made an incredible impact, and it was right there in front of you. But then he didn't play in the second half. And then the next week he tried to play, and he didn't play beyond the first series. So if you think he's going to bounce back and be himself, there's visual evidence to support that. If you think he can't last through a freaking game and there's no chance he's making it through 17, there's evidence to support that too. It's a tough one.